Hey everyone, welcome back to another video from A Man Talks FPL SC. In today's NRL SuperCoach video, we're going through the round 24 trade targets and preview only 2 rounds to go, so it's definitely time to be chasing pods, counting how many trades you have. I imagine for most of you, you're looking at a big donut. Hopefully for some of you, you have been able to save 2, maybe even just 1 trade just to maximize for the final 2 rounds. Only a few players I think we're really going to be discussing, so the video may be a little bit shorter, but as always, if you enjoy it, really appreciate a thumbs up. Do please subscribe to the channel as well. Really appreciate all the support we've had throughout the whole season so far, and hopefully you all can do really well for the final 2 rounds of the season. But let's get straight into the video. So a quick wrap up of how I did in round 23. I scored 1,047, which I thought was actually an okay score. Unfortunately, I did have to use one of my last 2 trades. I wasn't able to field 17 with the news of Tom Trbojevic out, so I actually brought in Josh Curran. Now, obviously he scored well, he scored 70 points, but he is potentially a doubt for this round given that he copped a pretty nasty looking head knock towards the back end of last week's game, so really concerning that I brought him in. He might not be available for me this round. But that one final trade, I am looking to use it this week, going hell for leather. The only downside is that in round 25, there's probably going to be a lot of player restings, but look, we'll deal with that when it comes to that. But overall, yeah, rank of 5,141. We're not ending the season fantastically. This is the lowest I've been ranked all season long. Hopefully with that one single trade, we can turn that into some green arrows for the final 2 rounds of the season. So there's quite a few players who have been named this week and who have been ruled out actually for quite a while. I'm not going to go through all of them in detail here. Some key ones that are included this round: Tyson Frizzell is back from a single game suspension. Jerome Hughes and Brandon Smith are also back after their resting last round, so definitely good news for any people who are still holding on to either of these 2 guys. Brian To'o is a massive inclusion, coming back early from his syndesmosis injury, so if you have got potential to bring back Brian To'o, that's a massive point of difference move that not many people are able to do, so really big news that he's in the team. In terms of key outs, some players who've unfortunately picked up some significant long-term injuries. Adam Dewey looks like he could be out for best case 3 months due to an ACL sprain. Could be even worse than that, up to 5-6 months. So really bad news for him. He's had a great season. Micah Seaver as well is looking like he's out for a long time on the sidelines. Definitely, with these 2 players, it's something to consider as well for the beginning of next season. Josh Mansour picked up a pretty nasty looking knee injury. So these are the 3 guys who've had some pretty significant knee injuries actually in the last week or so. Also in team news, we have some players who have been relegated to the bench, Nico Hines being the best example of that. Not really the best because it's not a great situation for anyone who's still holding on to him, but overall a lot of team news, so definitely do catch yourself up on that if you haven't already. But overall, I think at this point in the season, most people are probably just looking to field the best 17 that they possibly can. So I thought the first point of discussion would be Nathan Cleary and Daly Cherry Evans, and which one of the 2 is probably the better buy for the final 2 rounds of the season. There is a massive difference in price between the pair of them. Obviously Cleary at 950k and Cherry Evans at 705. That's a 245k saving going for a Cherry Evans instead. Obviously the average between these 2 guys is crazy. Cleary has just had a ridiculous SuperCoach season up until this point, averaging 110, looked really good last week. I think he scored 82 last round, but Cherry Evans also had a pretty decent game himself, scoring in the 80s. And I much prefer Cherry Evans' final 2 games of the season with the Bulldogs and the Cowboys versus Penrith, who have got the Tigers, and then might be what could be considered a tougher matchup in the Eels. Although to be honest, with the way that the Eels are going and the way that the Panthers are loading up for the finals, I think they could also be putting on a cricket score, to be honest, in that game. I think all factors considered, if you are able to get to Nathan Cleary and make the trades work in terms of, even if you had to use 2 trades, downgrade a player who's not playing for you just to create funds to get up to Nathan Cleary, I think I would probably prefer that move over a Cherry Evans, just because I think he has got that potential to just go really big and be a massive point of difference either in your head-to-head finals or if you're looking to really gain some ground in the overall rankings. Otherwise, I think if you are in the market for obviously a halfback to really end your season well, Cherry Evans is not going to be doing bad things for you. 2 great games to end the season, and I think at his price, obviously with that massive saving on Cleary, if you aren't able to stretch to him, I think he's a perfectly fine move, and you're obviously going to be more likely to get to him in just the 1 trade. Using 2 trades on Cherry Evans, I'm not sure if I would be doing that. But obviously he has also got really high upside himself, so I think he is also a great trade in. All things considered though, I think I'd prefer Nathan Cleary, but I think there's absolutely nothing wrong with going with the Cherry Evans. I own Cherry Evans. I'm very happy to have him for the final 2 games of the season. Also probably something that works in Cherry Evans' favour. I don't see him really getting a rest, with Manly also still looking to try to push into a top 4 position. Historically, he doesn't seem to be rested that much versus Cleary, who's obviously got the significant injury. If they've sewn up a top 2 position after playing the Tigers, I could potentially see Penrith resting him because there's no gain to be made, risking him when he's obviously still nursing a bit of a shoulder concern, although admittedly he did look quite good, was making a lot of tackles, etc. So if you're really concerned about a potential resting for Cleary, that would would obviously sway you towards Cherry Evans, but if you have got the ability to get Cleary with a decent backup, then I think going with him is perfectly fine. So the next trade and targets I wanted to discuss were the fullbacks. I've added Kalen Ponga potentially as a trade out because he just hasn't looked that good. And I think if you are able to switch Kalen Ponga to Pappenhausen and Tedesco, who I think are the two best replacements at fullback, I think I would be advocating that move. Yes, his draw is good with the Titans and the Broncos, but he's had a good draw for the past few weeks and it's just not happening. Versus Tedesco, who's just looking on form, 182 points he scored last week in SuperCoach. Yes, the Rabbitohs is a tough matchup, but they do often concede points. And then he's got the Raiders in round 25. I don't think Tedesco will get rested, just based on the fact that the Roosters are also looking to secure a top 4 position. Do they really have the depth as well at this point in time to be resting? I'm not quite sure, but I think Tedesco is fairly safe for the final 2 rounds of the season. So I really like Tedesco as a buy and one of the best trade-in targets for this round. And even trading from Ponga to him, I think that's a great upgrade. Clint Gutherson, look, he's had the tough draw for the last 2 games of the season. He'll have Melbourne this week and then he'll have the Panthers next round. There's already some talk from Brad Arthur that he's going to be rested in round 25. So for me, he is a prime sell candidate. He hasn't been doing that well in the past few weeks as it is. And I think when you've got someone like Ryan Pappenhausen there, who's cheaper than Clint Gutherson, to me, that is the most obvious trade I think to be making this round. Clint Gutherson to Pappenhausen, that's probably what I'm going to be doing with my final trade. Pappenhausen I don't think is going to be rested, given that he is coming off such a long period away from the game. I think he's really going to be wanting to get legs in his minutes. Craig Bellamy is going to want to make sure that Pappenhausen is fit and firing for the finals. He's starting now, he's goal kicking, even against the Eels and then the Sharks. I could see, honestly, they could score 50 in each of those games, and if Pappenhausen's goal kicking, setting up tries, look, he could honestly get 150 plus in both of those games. I think we have to remember what Pappenhausen was doing at the beginning of the season, and at 430k I think he is. To me, yeah, Gutherson to Pappenhausen is a really, really obvious move. If you're looking for any other fullback, you could go for a Reece Walsh, who has actually been posting some decent scores, decent 2 games as well to end the season in the Raiders and the Titans. But for me personally, I think Pappenhausen is cheaper, and I would prefer Pappenhausen over a Reece Walsh. But say if you've already got Pappenhausen in your team and you can't stretch to Tedesco, I think going for a Walsh is also a valid move. Now this section I thought would be a little bit different. Someone asked me on Twitter as well, good point of difference players for the run home. So what I've done is for every position I've tried to pick out what I think could potentially be the best super point of difference to go for, to either be a bit of a differentiator in your head-to-head finals, or if you're looking to chase overall ranks towards the end of the season, these are the guys who potentially could help you in the way there. So in the hooker position, I think Api Coruscant is the best point of difference to go for. Obviously, Harry Grant is probably the best overall option, but if you're looking purely from a point of difference factor, I think Coruscant at 439k, very, very cheap. Decent matchup this week in the Tigers. And he scored 71 last game week and only 3.6% owned. There was obviously a lot of talk about Coruscant in the beginning of the season, so I think he could also be a decent option in your hooker position for the run home. I guess the only downside with Coruscant is that he doesn't sometimes always play the full 80 minutes, but I think in an easy matchup against the Tigers, he obviously could get some attacking stats and still post a decent score even without playing the full 80. In front row forward, I think Matt Lodge for the Warriors is probably the best point of difference to go for. 5% owned. He was absolutely killing it before his suspension. He was actually looking like he was able to get some attacking stats with some offloads, etc. And the Warriors have 2 decent matchups to end the season, so I think he does actually also have that high upside to get 100 plus. So I think for a pod, I really like Matt Lodge in your front row forward. In your second row forward, I think with Manly's really nice games to end the season, Hamali Olakau'atu at 446k with only less than 5% ownership, he could really be one of those guys who in the second row forward has got high upside and really is low owned, so he really could be a good differentiating factor in your head-to-head finals or chasing overall ranks, and coming off a 77 as well in round 23. Now halfback and 5'8" is really hard to kind of justify, in my opinion, really good point of difference players, because you've got such good options at Cherry Evans, Nathan Cleary. In the 5'8", you've got Cody Walker, Cam Munster. I think these are the kind of positions you don't really want to be messing around. You really want to be getting the best guys. But if you're just going hell for leather, just looking like, stuff it, let me get the point of difference guys, you could go for a Braden Trindle at halfback, who's coming off a massive 130 last round. He is goal kicking. Pretty decent matchup this week in the Broncos, but then next week he does have Melbourne Storm. So that is one of the downsides in going for a Braden Trindle. Maybe you could consider like a Mitch Pearce with that good draw, but yeah, as I mentioned, this one is definitely a throw on the dartboard. Jake Clifford, similar with the Knights' decent draws. He's coming off a 98 last round. He is goal kicking, but I don't don't know how much faith you want to be putting in the Knights attacking stocks at the moment, because they do look a little bit clunky, even in these easier games, not really doing bits. 438k is a decent price, but as I mentioned, I've kind of given my thoughts on halfback and 5'8". I don't think it's a position you really want to be messing around in. In the centre wing, I think that it definitely is good scope to be going for point of difference players, because it's one of those positions where, with 7 slots, you have got that flexibility of going for some point of difference options, to go along with some more safe options that you have there with maybe like your Ruben Garrick, etc. So Ewan Aitken, he's been doing really, really well in recent weeks after moving into the back row. He scored 69 last week, basically all in base. I think there was a funny stat where since he's been playing in the back row, or like the last 2 weeks, he's had 31 hit-ups with 0 passes. He's a very selfish player. He just loves to run, which for SuperCoach, we absolutely will take that. 2 decent games to end the season, 2.3% owned. He is a little bit expensive at 585k, but say for example, if you're looking to move off Nicho Hynes as he has been benched, you could go for a Ewan Aitken. That may even potentially free up enough money for you to get that upgrade up to a Nathan Cleary. Those, for example, would be 2 decent trades in my opinion. And so I really like Ewan Aitken as a point of difference in your centre wing. And Reece Walsh at 7.4% is probably the best pod fullback that you can go for. You obviously also have like a Will Kennedy, but I really prefer Walsh's upside. He is goal kicking as well. 2 decent games to end the season. I think otherwise, apart from that, you probably would be looking at a Pappenhausen as your point of difference, but he didn't really meet my criteria in terms of ownership percentage. I was looking for guys who were mainly around the 5% or less, although at fullback, under 5%, in my opinion, there weren't really many fantastic options, so that's why I've opted for a Reece Walsh here. Some of these players maybe gets you thinking about maybe some guys that you can look at instead of going for your more kind of typical template players, and hopefully these guys can carry you well in your head-to-head or maybe in your overall ranking chase. So we'll also do a quick overview of the top 10 trade-ins and trade-outs. Much like other weeks, the trade-outs definitely are dependent on injuries, so Adam Doueihi looks like his season is over. Nicho Hynes has been relegated to the bench. I potentially would hold on to Nicho Hynes just in the off chance that in round 25, if the Melbourne Storm do rest some of their big gun players, Nicho Hynes is always that utility player who comes in, gets a starting role. So maybe if Munster gets rested, Hynes will be at 5'8". If Hughes gets rested, he'll go to halfback. He can even potentially play in the middle a little bit, even maybe some dummy half. So Hynes, yes, I wouldn't look to be playing him in your 17 this week, given he is coming off the bench, but potentially he could be an okay hold for maybe next week if the mass restings do occur, as it tends to happen in round 25. Ryan Madison, gone for the season, makes sense. Luke Thompson, unfortunately, came back last week and got a suspension again, so yeah, he is out for the rest of the season. Really unfortunate. Mike Osivo, we've already touched on. Tyson Gamble isn't playing. He's probably one of those guys that you are looking to trade out for a Nathan Cleary or a Daly Cherry Evans. Keon Kolomatangi has also been suspended. Dave Fifita, look, it's a tough one. He's coming off the bench. He has not been doing well in recent weeks, but if that's a really luxury trade in my opinion. If you have with the trades, obviously you could move off a Dave Fifita and go for another second row forward option. But yeah, for me, I don't have that luxury, so Fifita is staying in the team for me, but definitely him coming off the bench rules him out for any captaincy or vice captaincy consideration. Sean Johnson is probably one of these players who is definitely being one of the trade outs to a Nathan Cleary, Cherry Evans. Angus Crichton, a bit surprising because he is supposed to be coming back next round, so if you can hold off and maybe you don't have to trade him if you've got enough depth in your second row forward, I think he's fine to hold for next round. In terms of the trade-ins, Nathan Cleary and Cherry Evans, 2 halfbacks there, who I definitely advocate as strong buys for this round. Brian To'o as well. He is still relatively high owned, as I think he's around 19%. Obviously a lot of players probably just would have held him up until this point, or he could just be in a lot of ghost dead teams. He is definitely expensive at 640k, but I still think he's such a solid centering option, probably the best that we've had all season long up until Ruben Garrick and Nicho Hynes. So it's a safe bet going for To'o, and against the Tigers he could definitely turn up this round, so I really still like him as a buy. And Pappenhausen, I've given my thoughts. I'm very, very hot on Ryan Pappenhausen as one of the best trade-ins this round. 426k is dirt cheap, and I think he will hopefully score 2 tons in the final 2 rounds of the season. Adokar obviously is coming off a big 130. I think he potentially is one of those guys who could be rested in round 25, so I would definitely proceed with caution if you are looking to go for an Adokar. And I think if you were looking to make sure you've got a good 17 playing for next round, maybe I wouldn't go for an Adokar, given that resting potential is there. Tom Trbojevic makes perfect sense. He's back from his 1 week off and he's coming up against the Bulldogs. We'll get onto that section just in a little bit. Probably is the best captain this round for sure. Cherry Evans I've already mentioned. Brandon Smith and Munster. Brandon Smith is obviously also coming back from his week off. Could be a very good option and still decently priced actually at 533k. So maybe if you're looking to fill the spot in your second row forward, could be a decent option. Munster obviously had a great round last week. He also potentially does have that resting risk, although he has missed a few weeks already this season, so he could play. But just given the Storm's history in round 25 of resting their big gun players, I would be a little bit hesitant at bringing in Cam Munster. And if you have got the right dual position players, I potentially would switch that around, and maybe you can bring in a Cherry Evans at halfback instead, who I don't think really should be getting a rest. Mitch Barnett has been confirmed to be playing on the starting edge for the Knights, so I think he's also still a valid option. He got some attacking stats last round, so I think he could be good for a solid 60 or 70 to end the season. And Connor Watson had a big 95 as well. He's fine. He's coming good. Funnily enough, looking at my team from round 1, he's the only player who has been there since round 1. What an absolute legend, scoring 95 last week on my reserves. I need every player that I can get. I need every point that I can get. So Connor Watson, yeah, you know what? I don't hate the move because he is also starting at lock this round. Now, vice captaincy and captaincy this week, I think honestly is very, very straightforward. I've got Kalen Ponga there as a potential vice captain against the Titans, but considering that I said he could be also a trade out to a Pappenhausen, I'm not sure how confident I would be putting the vice captain on him. I think really there's only 3 options I'd go for. I'd vice captain maybe a Melbourne Storm player, Hughes and Cam Munster, because they definitely always look involved in the Melbourne Storm attack and both have got that potential to get big 100+ point scores. The only reason I haven't got Ryan Pappenhausen on this vice captaincy list is if you vice captain Pappenhausen, you're not going to be able to captain Tom Trbojevic, which in my opinion is the best captain to go for this round. Coming up against the Bulldogs, 5th worst at defending the fullback position. I think Tom Trbojevic this season when he's played the Bulldogs, he's scored like 150+ in both games. Well, he's scoring 150+ against everyone. So in my opinion, just captain him. Or if you want, you could vice captain Tom Trbojevic, and then in the game after, captain Nathan Cleary. Now that could be the best combination to go for if you have got these 2 players, because then obviously you have to make sure that you've got the right players to be able to do your vice captain loophole in that specific situation. But that could be a really good play because I think they're both the best captain options for this round. But if you're looking to play safe, just go for a captaincy on Tom Trbojevic. I think he's going to score another big 150+, and as a result, I think players like Jason Saab, Ruben Garrick are also going to score really well. So we could see this round be also a very, very high scoring one. Now, I'm not going to go through the break evens of players, but I think with only 2 rounds to go, you're not looking to be focusing so much on the break even. I think it's more just about if you can afford the player, then go for it. So we'll just give a quick update on the group league for round 23. Our top scorer was Thomas from Watkin Wizards, scoring a big 1,482, overall ranking of 24,000. But look, I would have taken that 1,482, that is for sure. And in our overall top 5, we've got Jason has actually moved up to the top position in our group league with an overall rank of 17. Also had a pretty good round of 1,328. Unfortunate for Andrew of Eliminators, who's been sitting inside the overall rank top 10 for such a long time, but it looks like he's had a really unfortunately bad round, only scoring 940 last week. I had a quick look at his team. He has been hammered with injuries. I'm hoping he's got some trades, but yeah, really unlucky because he's had such a good season up until this point, but still a 44 overall rank. If you ignore where he was sitting all season long, that's a fantastic season, but knowing where he was previously, it is a bit unfortunate. Rounding out our top 5, we've got Samuel, James and James again, all sitting inside the top 420, so really strong seasons for all of them. Yeah, my dream of getting to the top 1,000 guys, I think it's off the card. Given that I'm ranked 5,100, I'm hoping to maybe just get into the top 2% overall, or maybe even the top 3,000. I think that'd be a good finish for me, given where I am at this point in the season. And I'm hoping my trade of Clint Gutherson to Ryan Pappenhausen will help me get there. So that's it, guys. That is the round 24 trade targets and round preview. My final word is basically just make sure that you're maximizing your trades as much as possible, getting in the guys who you think have got the highest upside and the best potential for you to either do really well in your head-to-heads or in your chase for a good overall ranking. And I think this is the time when the pressure's off, unless you're sitting really, really high. If you're any of you are like me, you're kind of sitting at a bit of an in-between rank, just the pressure's off, just have a bit of fun with it. At the end of the day, this is a game. We want to enjoy it as much as we can. So if that means, burning your last trade on a fun player who you just like the look of, I would say go for it, because at the end of the day, we want to enjoy this. And I think with only 2 rounds to go, make the most of it that you can. So hopefully you guys enjoyed the video. Do give it a like if you enjoyed it, and do please consider subscribing to the channel as well. As you guys might have seen, I have been putting out more videos on Fantasy Premier League as we are wrapping up the NRL SuperCoach season. That will be obviously filling in a lot of the off-season content. So if you guys do enjoy that, obviously do please subscribe to the channel as well. But I'll see you all in the next video.